Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and today I have more breaking news for you. And you're going to keep hearing this all day because we've got a lot going on. Free agency literally starts in an hour and a half. But breaking news comes out before that multiple times today. And this one, Tee Higgins requesting a trade from the Cincinnati Bengals. So let's talk about this. I want to let you guys know what my thoughts are on it, what a trade might look like. What do we think the Jaguars are going to do here as well? So, first and foremost, situation with Tee Higgins. He's entering his fifth year, did not have a fifth year option because he was a second round pick. The Bengals decided to franchise tag him. Now, the situation that leaves the Bengals in is essentially that this year they pay him about $21 million. The next year, if they want to extend him on the franchise tag and use it a second time, it's 26. And then you get to the point where you kind of question whether they'll pay that because it's a little too much money. So there's a scenario where Tee Higgins, just next offseason, ends up walking. And so if the Bengals don't think they can extend him long term, which it does not seem like this is going to happen based off the fact that they have not had any talks about long term contract extension for a while now. I mean, it's over a year we're talking about. Then it kind of forces Cincinnati's hand if they want to get value out of him. Because you really have two options, right? One is you keep him this year, you make him play, and he goes out and tries to help you win a Super Bowl. Or you prepare now, you trade him to another team, you get more than that compensatory third round selection that you would get in a best case scenario, and you try to draft someone. And there are plenty of people to draft this year, a lot of options. So I think that realistically, he probably gets dealt this offseason at some point. I don't know when, but at some point it's going to happen. And so, we'll talk about the Jaguars. I think just a few hours from now, and maybe by the time you watch this, they might emerge as a top contender for Tee Higgins. And it really comes down to what happens with Calvin Ridley. Because if you bring back Calvin Ridley, I don't think you entertain the idea of paying a ton of big time receivers. But if you lose Calvin Ridley, all of a sudden, your only legit option at receiver that is a very good football player is Christian Kirk. That is all you have. Then you got Evan Ingram at tight end, but the receiving room becomes very barren at that point. And so you talk about what do the Jaguars need? What kind of player? Talk about fits. This is the best fit that you can find in all of the NFL because the Jaguars need someone who can extend passes down the field, who can get open for deep passes. We don't have that right now. We don't have contested catch winners. Tee Higgins has done that, but the most important part of this is that he's done it with Trevor Lawrence before. And that's why there's going to be so much interest from the fans, inevitably interest from the players. I'm sure that Trevor Lawrence is going to put in a word to Trent Baalke to go out and get Tee Higgins. And if you lose Calvin Ridley a grade, which I think is what's going to happen, you desperately need wide receiver. And now at the exact same time, this huge opportunity has opened itself up. So I think this is something that they absolutely consider pursuing to try to get something special to happen in 2024. Now to talk about what does a trade look like, I'm just going to show you through PFF some of the options that you have. And so PFF essentially grades out players, tries to put a trade value with all of them. It's not perfect, right? But it can give you an idea. And so you're probably going to see an offer from other teams where you're getting a late first round pick or an early early second round pick. I think the Carolina Panthers, perfect example of that. Probably would give up 33, would give up maybe an early day 3 selection. So how can the Jaguars compete with that? Because 17 I think is a lot. It's too rich, right? You're giving up a very early pick and a very loaded draft for a player that's good, but you have to pay him a ton of money, right? So I don't know if that happens, but here's what I think they have the opportunity to do. So let's throw Tee Higgins in here. You're probably talking about a pick swap in the first round. I think if they trade with him, that's an inevitability, similar to how the Jets and Packers flipped whenever the Packers were trading Aaron Rodgers to the Jets. I think that would happen in this trade. I think if you're not sending your first, you have to send your second and your third. And at that point, I still don't think that's enough for him. I think you're going to have to do more to contend with other teams for him. I think two things that you have to consider as far as players or future picks. You might have to throw in a third for the next year. That's a possibility. That would make it very possible that the Bengals would accept this trade. You might talk about a player too, though. And the Jaguars, right now, have two tackles. One of them's going to sit, one of them's going to start. And one of them might just be on our team for all we know. I'm talking about Cam Robinson and Walker Little. The Bengals have a needed tackle. Ideally, it would be a right tackle. However, of course, we know the Jaguars have left tackles in abundance. And honestly, I still think that would be considered for the Bengals. I think they would take that kind of move. So maybe you consider throwing in additional capital. It could be Walker Little. It could be Cam Robinson. I think one of those players would realistically be a trade piece in this. And not that they're the main driving force, right? This is an additional part of the trade. It's not what the Bengals want the most, right? They'd rather have the picks, of course, but this is the kind of stuff that I think you have to send to try to get a deal like this done. So let's say it's Walker Little, because Walker Little has 1 year left. He's affordable. I think the pedigree is there for him to be a good player. He has not had the chance in Jacksonville, whether or not you think he's earned it or deserves it or any of that. He just has not had the chance to start like other players have had. And so I think you see something like this overall get thrown in. Now you compare this to what another team might throw in the value of it. What if Detroit throws in a late pick in the first round? How does that compare? It's lopsided, right? This, as a trade, is more valuable than a late first rounder. Is something I think that the Jaguars could pull off. Maybe you don't send the third, and you still are offering more. My point I'm trying to make is that I think the Jaguars could pull off a trade like this using a lot of resources, after the first round, trying to find a way to keep that important pick that's going to land a very good player, while sending off picks that, you drafted Brennan Strange and Tank Bigsby with last year, right? And I'm not trying to throw shade at those guys, but you haven't done well with them. Are you willing to move on from those selections, especially when this team right now feels like a lot of spots are shored up, and they're going to shore them up in free agency. This is the way they operate every year. They try to fill their needs before the draft. Very much a team that wants to take a BPA approach. So I think it is very much within the realm of possibility that the Jaguars could swindle this trade, sending a lot of day two capital, maybe sending one of their tackles. It's clear need for the Bengals, and Jacksonville doesn't need both players. Jacksonville probably needs to draft another tackle to be the swing or be the future on the right side of that line for when Anton inevitably plays on the left. So what do you guys think? You think Tee Higgins should be a Jaguar? You think this is a smart trade? Want to hear your thoughts? I think if it's me, I'm finding a way to get it done. I'm usually not an advocate for making huge moves like this. I usually don't want to trade away picks, and especially in a year like this. But there are some players that are an excuse for that rule that I've set for myself. And Tee Higgins, out of all those players, is probably the one at the top of that list. He's a special player. He's someone who has played with Lawrence, succeeded. He brings in exactly what you're missing. And he's 25 years old now. Or getting close to that. You're going to have him for a long time. You're not going to regret that move. Similar to the Eagles with A.J. Brown. They wouldn't undo it. They're fine having sent that because they know if they got a receiver, if they saw something in they thought could be better on their team. And I think the Jaguars should feel the exact same way about Tee Higgins. So let me know what you think. We're going to have more videos today because free agency is about to kick off. We're going to learn a lot more. This trade idea might just die by the end of the day for all we know. Because if Calvin Ridley comes back, well, I don't think the Jaguars are going to pay 3 receivers that much. But still, want to give you guys my thought on this. definitely a storyline that we're going to have to watch this offseason because the Jaguars would be logical contenders, and I think they will be very much nudged in that direction by two Clemson players on their team that are going to be there for quite a while, and you know who they are. So thanks for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Enjoy free agency. I'll have some more videos later. That's all I've got. Go Jags.